Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Unfiltered OT Mom chat. In our last mom chat, we talked about sensory processing and how we actually have more than the five senses we learned in school. We talked about vestibular, proprioception, and interoception. And I know for a lot of you, that was probably the first time you've ever heard of those words. But now you're probably wondering, okay, Brooke, now what, right? What can I actually do to help my child? So today I want to give you some practical strategies that you can start using right away. And before we jump in, I want to say something really, really important, okay? There isn't one sensory activity or strategy that works for every child. Every child has a unique sensory profile, right? The goal isn't to copy what worked for someone else's child. The goal is to understand what your child needs. And sometimes those things are going to change. Sometimes we have to problem solve, be a detective, and figure out what new things we need to put into place. So now, let's dive in. Let's start with the vestibular system. Remember, this is the system that helps us understand movement, balance, and where our head is in space. It happens in the inner ear. Some kids are constantly moving, they're spinning, they're climbing on everything, they're jumping off of the couch, they're always upside down. Now, other kids may avoid movement, so they don't like swings. They may get nervous on the playground or getting on playground equipment. They get car sick easy, and neither is wrong, okay? They're just processing movement or this vestibular input differently. So now you ask, what can we do? One of my favorite recommendations is simply adding intentional movement throughout the day, okay? So let's talk about what this may look like, right? So on the playground, you want to encourage them swinging. They may be doing, you may implement, an obstacle course inside, outside, in your backyard, swinging, dancing, or taking movement breaks between homework. Movement helps many children wake their bodies up, right? Or organize their nervous system so they can focus, learn, and participate a lot more successfully. Sometimes our kids aren't trying to be wild. Their bodies are just telling them that they need to move, that they need more input. So next, we have proprioception. And let's review that from last time. It's one of my favorite sensory systems because the strategies are so easy to work into everyday life. So it helps us know where our body is in space, right? It lets us know how much force we need to use in relation to the objects around us. If your child crashes into furniture, loves big squeezes and hugs, pushes too hard, breaks crayons, slam doors, or is constantly trying to wrestle, they're probably seeking this input. So one of the easiest ways to support this system is through what we call heavy work. So it doesn't mean lifting weights, right? It means activities that involve pushing, pulling, carrying, climbing, and using our muscles in our joints. So more gross motor movements. That can be animal walks, or your bear walks, your crab walks, wall push-ups, carrying groceries to help with household chores, playing tug of war, things like that. Heavy work gives the brain and the body more information about where the body is in space. And for many children, it can be calming and really help them organize their bodies. Now let's talk about interoception. This is our body's internal awareness. So it lets us know when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we need to use the restroom, when our heart is beating or pounding fast, or when our emotions are starting to climb and build up. So some children don't recognize these signals, right? They don't recognize them until they become incredibly strong and it begins to become overwhelming, right? So instead of noticing, they're getting frustrated. They may suddenly explode. Instead of realizing that they need to use the bathroom, they go when it's an emergency, right? So one way to build this skill is through what we call body check-in. So throughout the day, you might want to ask or have scheduled times where you ask, how does your tummy feel? Do you need a drink? Do you need to use the restroom? What emotions are you feeling right now? How does your body feel? How do you feel? The more we can help children connect what's happening inside our body, the better they become at recognizing those feelings before they become overwhelming. And so, one thing I always tell parents is sensory activities are not rewards, okay? So, these aren't rewards. They're not something that kids have to earn. For many kids, sensory input or these breaks are needed, just like sleep, just like food, just like water, and all of our other basic necessities, right? And another thing, you do not need to spend hundreds of dollars on fancy sensory equipment. Some of the best strategies happen during everyday life activities, right? So, like helping to carry the groceries, playing outside, playing on the playground, right? Swinging, climbing, sliding, all of those gross motor movements. Like I said again, building obstacle courses. It could be inside with the couch cushions. You could build a fort, you know. So simple things like that can have a big, huge impact with our kids in getting them the input that they need. So I hope today's mom chat gave you a better understanding of not just what to do, but why the strategies can help, and just simple practical ways that you can implement the strategies, right? If you found this helpful, I love for you to subscribe so you don't miss the future mom chats. Share this with someone that you know, a parent, a friend, a teacher, someone that could benefit from these strategies, okay? Um, as always, share, like, subscribe. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. And guess what? I'll see you on the next mom chat.